Hey guys, before we get going, I'll make this shorter than I have in the previous couple videos. Just keep in mind that, of course, Australia still needs a lot of help. This isn't going to be something that's fixed overnight, so if you're able to give in any way, I'll leave those links down in the description below. This is something that's very important, I think, overall to the grand scale of the world, more so than just Australia. So keep it in mind. I've heard a couple of good things, like the koala population will actually be, for the most part, okay, and also that, for the most part, things have actually settled down. There are some areas that have been raging still with fires, and there does need to be a lot of help for recovery afterward. It's not just stopping everything. Anyway, already rambled on a little bit longer than I'd like to, but thank you guys for all the support you have given. I know Bungie's also starting something here shortly, so big props to them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this little video of mine.
Wait, no, this isn't that kind of video.
Bungie did a thing that makes me scratch my head. Was the lore tab just not added? Was it not intended to be added? Was it not ready? Was it to attempt to rewrite the quest and give some kind of background for a lackluster exotic quest? Alright, show of hands. How many of you knew this thing finally got a lore tab? I'll be honest, I didn't until someone pointed it out to me from another video I had made stating that the thing didn't have a lore tab. Leviathan's Breath is a case of a lot of weird within the development of Destiny 2. It feels really like it was a rushed weapon and almost like it was intended as a gimme exotic. Now there's nothing wrong with that. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Devil's Ruin and how that quest went, but at least there had been some fun voice work that was done for the quest, and we finally heard Shaq sing. But more on that later. Much later, since I don't want that to be today's video. It can't talk about Leviathan's Breath without bringing up the quest. Not every weapon can be as epic as Last Word or Thorn, or even Outbreak Perfected. I mean, some we just get from random happenstance, like Telesto, Graviton Lance, and Monte Carlo. Some weapons and equipment we have and use as Guardians just isn't quite as grand as the other. I mean, as Shin Malfur himself has commented on Rose, Rezalazir's old reliable? Well, it was just a weapon. Who used it was what mattered in making it a legendary piece of equipment. Though, I don't know, Shin, that perk set kinda says otherwise. Anyway, unless there was something absolutely subtle that flew under the radar for me with the quest, then I have no clue what the point of Leviathan's Breath's exotic quest was all about. Leviathan's Breath, the exotic piece of metal with a heavy bike chain attached to it, at least packs a punch. I use it more than I kind of expected I was going to. It certainly fares better in just messing around than in a serious use scenario, at least from my experience. I'll let Glad break the game again and use it or something. But just as Rose and other weapons tend to be, your experience may vary. Look, there isn't much to really talk about with this thing, okay? You pull back the metal chain, act like you're pedaling to the store to pick up some smokes or something, and smack something in the face with the sonic distance of a Barrett. That basically is a Barrett. New idea. Heavy sniper rifle that actually is heavy, not Darcy or Whisper, okay? Okay. But getting back to the lore tab, there are some odd implications that can be made from it. We'll give it a read over and I'll explain what in a minute, but consider who's narrating, along with some words and situations that just seem really off for the narrator. Don't ask me where I heard this, I honestly can't remember, but legend has it this bow has fouled more behemoths and seen more of the known universe than the whole Vanguard combined. You hear a lot of stories when you work as a gunsmith, as long as I have, and this bow is a wild one. This thing is the king of killers. Almost got Gaul, too. I think it was, Callus, who had it crafted for his huntsmaster. What's her name? Voik? Yeah. Anyway, Callus had this obsession with collecting the hides and heads of the rarest and most formidable creatures Voik could find. Now with this bow, she was real good at it. Gwern the Unbeatable, defeated. Giant sea monsters, taken down to size. I even heard she slayed an Ahamkara, which is very impressive, if it's true. Callus was so thrilled with her that she got a promotion, of sorts. It wasn't common knowledge. He called her the Shadow of the Wilds, which never sat right with me. Scion Flayers aren't known for their stealth. She was his assassin. When she wasn't hunting prize game, she was doing Callus's dirty work in the most remote corners of the galaxy. When Gaul attacked the tower, Callus thought this would be the perfect time to strike and ordered Voik to do Gaul in. Take a guess how that worked out. Makes you wonder who got to her first, because with this bow in hand, she shouldn't have failed. I'd like to attribute this to user error, because when I found the bow near her corpse, it was still in pristine condition. I'm glad I grabbed it before the tower was evacuated. Could all just be hearsay, but here's a real chance to vindicate this work of art and give it a legacy worth preserving. Hunting's fine, but Guardians have a greater purpose. Banshee 44. I mean, do I have to spell out the issues here? First off, the confirmation of the narrator. It's Banshee 44. Yeah, this guy.
I'll be pulling for you, if I remember.
That's impossible.
Mr. I can't remember where I put the wrench I had 5 seconds ago. And yet, he rambles off this story in perfect detail. Let's read the Grimoire card real quick for a reminder of Banshee as a character. But I already know the card. Look, it's 4 sentences, just shh. Few merchants at the tower serve as vital a function as Banshee 44. His knowledge of weapons is encyclopedic, but don't ask where it comes from. Banshee's mind and body have absorbed incredible punishment over the ages. He grapples with fragments of memory, the shrapnel of ancient ordeals that return to haunt him. Now there is a side that can be taken that isn't said here, which is basically Destiny's lore summed up in a nutshell. This tale never happened, and Banshee is just full of it. Which, in and of itself is, Banshee, why are you more concerned with looking for weapons and so on, instead of actually getting out of the tower like you probably should be? Like, literally, this is the last thing you should be worried about when Gaul is attacking and trying to take things over. Also, that Scion being on the ground, waiting for us, that sends up a whole different level of conspiracy theories and how that Scion even got in. Why was that Scion in the city ahead of time when Callus wasn't even close? Oh, the questions. Banshee himself is a case of misremembered life. He has issues putting 2 and 2 together in some cases. I'll take a more recent event as a for instance. During the Pain and Gain quest for Risk Runner, Banshee comments on how a friend with a chicken would say, "Trouble's the point." Now, you could argue this is because the Pain and Gain quest is largely there for New Light players, but when he calls out Cade by name in the Leviathan's bow quest text, this is where I have to counter that thought. It comes and goes for him. It's association, he knows that the person's there, but it's not always a clear picture. As best as I can tell, Banshee may suffer from one of 2 different mental disorders, or similar. I say similar, since the exo mind might be very different overall than our own for these cases, and with little to no evidence to fully support that thought, I'm, as always, speculating. We have information on dissociative exo-mind rejection, or DER, which I never really got a chance to cover much of.
Would you like to know more?
But I know that others have. In short, the exo-mind needs to be tricked into thinking it is a real human brain and it inhabits a human body, and so on. Otherwise, it goes into a shutdown mode. That's why Clovis Bray at least says they need to reset an exo, though Cade might have a few feelings on that. Still, I find this line of thinking no less interesting or personally intriguing. The first mental disorder could be compartmentalization. The general premise here is something caused the affected to feel a need to set memories to the side. It could be some incredible trauma that the affected doesn't want to face again, or it could be something that is only associated with work, as a bad experience or not. Some just have this disorder as a norm, and it's like a switch in some cases, but it's also a bit rare. Again, those that suffer from compartmentalization may have some kind of trauma they don't want to face, or do so with certain associations in their lives. Triggers, if you will. This is not limited to bad occurrences, but we're focusing on memory loss, and that's not really a positive in a lot of cases. Then there's the general idea of amnesia, which I know many associate Banshee with. Amnesia itself can be broken up into a bunch of different categories, but for the sake of today, selective amnesia can make the most sense with Banshee. This is not to say that an argument could not be made for other types, where I think you could argue Banshee could have transient global amnesia, but that's also because of some overlap that exists in the terminology. A lot of times with many psych disorders and so on, this is something that you face, trying to narrow down what it might exactly be and for total accurate analysis, etc. Anyway, the summation for selective amnesia. Certain events can be forgotten within a minute or two of some affectance. It can be short-term or long-term memory. It can be normal day-to-day activities or something not commonplace. What separates most of the types of amnesia is thanks to how you create new memories or reflect on existing ones. For instance, you can slowly lose old memories with time or forget events that occur. But this may be more related to dementia, Alzheimer's, or similar. But with selective amnesia, it could be something that is about certain people, but not about events or happenings in your day-to-day life. I hope that kind of makes sense. An example would be something found in the 60s where a naval officer went through physical brain damage. In this case, there is an outward source that hurt the officer's ability to create memories and literally destroyed a portion of his brain. Outside forces aren't always needed for amnesia to take place, but it does offer a line for Banshee if that's the case, for understanding more of what trauma may be linked to the events of these resets that an exo goes through, along with physical trauma that he may have suffered to his body overall. If some physical event hit Banshee's exo mind, like an actual shot to the head for instance, then I wonder if that could be a cause of it, along with the 44 resets that he's gone through, causing considerable strain to his psyche. I mean, at this point, it sounds like my human brain is working so well, so there's always that too. Banshee, it's not just you, buddy. In the case of this naval officer, they had gone several days without seeing their acting physician. This resulted in the officer thinking they were in no way related to their case, and also thinking they were an officer in higher standing that they had to report to. This would occur often after this break, and the affected officer had no idea who the doctor was when all was said and done. The officer in question wasn't able to create new memories, and this leads to one of the defining pieces of selective amnesia. I think some of this sounds familiar, at least to Banshee, and yes, I have a point behind this. I always try to make it seem like I do anyway. What was not lost for this officer was general day-to-day tasks. Motor functions, speech, and so on are put in different regions of the brain from memory. In a lot of cases, they're in our highly more protected areas within our brain. This helps those that go through brain damage or go through other situations that cause some type of damage or to lose some part of their brains in their lives, but with time, repair could be possible thanks to most of these areas being protected, if not fully, then at least partially. This is also why Banshee is generally okay with working on equipment that we give him, and why he can still work with the foundries to keep them all well and together, or at least partially happy. Not that we hear much about them at this point. His work keeps him stable. Again, this is important for Banshee. As a reminder for an exo, the number that is shown next to their name signifies how many resets they've gone through, as I've hinted at before with their mind states. Lakshmi 2, Shiro 4, Cade 6, Takeo 3, Banshee 44. Banshee has gone through the largest amount of resets that we've seen so far, and due to this, his mind isn't what it used to be. This causes him to forget a lot and not be able to recall stories and events very well. I think I said this already though, my memory's not quite what it used to be, as I have said several times already here, but that's different! I do have a reason to repeat myself, however. So let's get to the point of all of this. Think back to the entry for Leviathan's Breath. Banshee talks about this tale in full detail, about a scion, not a guardian, not even relevant to what's happening to the tower as a whole on a daily basis. Not even the kind of story we might hear throughout the tower as a whole. Also, he picked up this weapon during the assault by Gaul and was probably thinking about other stuff or focused on other stuff. There's a lot of moments just not adding up here. There's a couple simple explanations for this. Banshee just made up the story. He could have gotten pieces and bits from some kind of log or otherwise, and he just blurted out the story. It makes sense in his mind, but it didn't actually happen. He could have heard it from some around the tower grounds, some of the workers and so on, and somebody passed the information over to him. But for him to recall this story is the baffling part. What's the spinfoil answer that still feels to make the most logical sense?
You are traveler spawn. Do you know what that means?
I mean, Callus is all over the place with this bow. It's even in the name, for crap's sake. Callus has a thing for manipulating things to his will. If he could work on an exo, don't you think he would? Don't you think he'd try to have an army of exos if he could? I mean, that was the entire purpose of them being created by Clovis Bray in the first place. Programming a brain might be fun for him to try, after all. And with Banshee already in a horrible mental state and just kind of further along than he probably should be, well, it might be easy to just set in a kind of suggestion into his addled mind. He's done it with programming on a frame, and that could have just been a testing ground for him. Manipulation and programming happen in different mannerisms, depending on the subject, after all. And, of course, a lot of different things will kind of go into that. I mean, you don't have to look much further than Darwin or Pavlov for learned behavior and how you can teach a dog based on bells and so on. These little bits and pieces are not atypical, and I don't think they're out of the ordinary to think about. But really, if there's anything that to me makes sense in the realm of it all, then there could have been some manipulation going on of Banshee's mind. For Banshee the Scatterbrain to ramble off this story like he did from this entry, like he was there, it's really tough for me to say that he hasn't been in some way manipulated by Callus. The issue is, there's nothing that confirms this. It's a hunch. But I sure hope Banshee isn't under Imperial influence. That's no fun for our weaponsmith, and I certainly would not want to lose him to Callus, purple and gold being all of his colors, and that's about all that he really gave us. Just stop, Callus, please. Thank you. Anyway, I found this interesting to point out and thought it would be fun to bring up Amnesia, along with some design decisions that might have gone on with Bungie as well. Just would be nice to get a little bit further confirmation on what even happened here and how any of this makes sense for the character of Banshee as a whole. Not much of this really lines up well, but there are ways we can at least look into it and explain it away. In the meantime, like they say in the end of the No Time to Explain Grimoire card, I think it's safe to say the weapon is proving far more fun than we had hoped. For now, I'll turn the rest over to you guys. I didn't expect to go over this even this long, but it's been a fun little video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Any thoughts you'd like to add to this small theory? Do you think Callus is trying to extend his influence even to the vendors of the tower? Is there anything else you might add for the quest that was Leviathan's Breath that maybe I forgot about? How about our discussion on Amnesia? Anything to add about that? Anxious to read those comments below. Per usual, if you feel the need to support the channel in any way, you know the buttons to press. I'm thankful for all of you in this new year, and I have a renewed drive that took me a while to find, but hey, better late than never. To all of you, no matter when or where you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.